wondering how I got into this mix.
At Elevation Tour 2018 in Barcelona, Spain, this is Josh Friedman, joined by Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. Derrick, how you doing?
I'm doing amazing, brother. I'm elevated.
It's been a long 8 days, I would say.
Some of those packed tightly in a van.
Yes, we've been traveling quite a bit together over the past 8 days. We started out in Porto, Portugal, made our way to Lisbon, then to something in the vicinity of Madrid, and here we are wrapping up what's been a very excellent and very interesting 8 days on the Iberian Peninsula. What's your take on this Elevation Tour?
Well, I mean, to me it's been great because Jofi reached out, the team reached out, asked me if I want to come be a part of this, and I got to, look up everybody's work and kind of see what are these people about, and see that, well, it seems like all of our work is pretty aligned, and maybe some more in certain spheres, but definitely I think the general goals that we have are pretty similar. As far as the tour specifically, I was happy. This is my first time in Europe at all, obviously Portugal and Spain, but just first trip to Europe at all. So I was excited to make it here because I didn't think I'd make it out till maybe 2019, and especially to collaborate with such an eclectic group of people, yogis and other journalists and people speaking about a lot of different important topics. It's been great for me. These are the kind of things that I think are the future, if you will, because I think as activists, as journalists, as creative people, it's up to us to come straight to the people and not be so dependent on social media. So this is really right up my alley. This is what I want to do.
I think it's more up your alley than mine, being that you preach this concept of holistic activism, which isn't something that I really engage in, but I've been seeing you live that firsthand over the past 8 days. Everything from teaching about counter-economics to actually preaching gratitude and drawing raw emotion out of your fellow human beings over a dinner conversation. I've been very impressed with that, and I'd like for you to explain, not to your audience, but to some new viewers, what it is that you're talking about when you discuss holistic activism or holistic anarchy, as you describe it sometimes.
Sure. So, as you know, words are important. They have meaning. There are definitions to them. And I feel like sometimes words get lost in the mix, especially the word holistic in the spiritual communities. You have everything from holistic gardening, holistic sex, holistic cooking, all these things. But I really like to get back to the root of what the word means. It comes from the philosophy of holism, which is about studying whatever you're looking at, whether that's activism, the body, psychology, there's holistic ecology, studying systems as whole parts rather than simply focusing on the individual pieces. It doesn't mean that the individual pieces aren't important, because I'm a strident individualist and I believe in the power of individuals. But when you do that, when you take this really full spectrum picture, it does change the perspective that you get. And so I apply that to activism in the sense that not just focusing on, okay, it's the government's problem or it's the corporation's problem, always pointing our fingers outwardly, but really as individuals asking ourselves, looking at the problems that we identify, the concerns we have, whatever issues you may be drawn to, and then asking yourself, in which ways are you contributing to these things? And also getting beyond just understanding the ins and outs of political philosophy, because in my experience, I've been to all kinds of conferences and festivals, and I've met some brilliant people who can, just talk all day about political philosophy or maybe even spirituality, but then maybe when it comes to their personal relationships, interpersonal relationships, they don't extend the message that way. So maybe they're using aggressive or spiteful, violent communication. I believe in nonviolent communication. Maybe they understand the value of exiting from the governmental systems, yet in their purchasing power, they're supporting all sorts of other, systems and individuals and corporations that aren't in line with their values. So to me, holistic activism is literally just about, looking at these different parts of your life. Look at the economics, the financial. Look at your relationships. Look at your education. Look at all these different, however you want to break it down, and ask yourself, are these individual areas of my life in line with the things that I preach, that I talk about. And I think that the more we do that and the more self-reflective we are, we can, not from a place of judgment for me to say, hey, you're living wrong, but for each of us as individuals to come to that understanding of ourselves, because I do believe in voluntarism. I believe in coming to solutions from a voluntary perspective. I think liberty grows on the individual level. It can never be forced. So I can't go around telling everybody, hey, you're living wrong, you're living wrong, you're living wrong. Instead, I can just encourage people to have that introspection. And then from there, the idea, the hope is that they will notice, hey, you know what? I have some inconsistencies that I can work on, and be drawn to aligning themselves to live more principled lives, because I think that in the long term, whether we're talking about counter-economics or anarchism or whatever sort of systems we can dream up, it's going to take more than just changing the government, just changing the people in power, and even exiting those systems. We have to change ourselves, really work on ourselves. And it's difficult. It's a lot more difficult than just saying, go vote, or even just stop supporting the government. There's more involved in that from my perspective.
Something that's been a big part of my life and given me a much broader perspective as we get some pillow football in the middle of this interview. Something that's broadened my perspective has been travel. Yeah. And I've done a lot of it, particularly as I've lived abroad. But it's not only broadened my perspective in life, but as a journalist, it's really altered my journalism in the sense that it's given me an appreciation for presenting a variety of perspectives in my reporting. Now, I'm curious, since you're an activist journalist and you go about things a little differently, and this is your first trip to Europe, I'm just curious about your thoughts of your travels here to Europe and how this might influence you in the future, both on a professional level and a personal level.
Well, I want to say that one of the things that I really appreciate about your work is getting around, being out there, because it's definitely something that I desire to do more of. I've traveled more in the States and in Central and South America, and just starting to dip into that. And it's important for us to, some people, there's all sorts of journalists, obviously, right? But some people, they're okay with just being that local journalist, or even just an American journalist that has only an American perspective. But if we're dealing in geopolitics and we want to actually have this wider perspective, which I think is important as journalists, then travel is essential. I mean, you can only learn so much from behind the computer screen. And I feel like one of the things that we encounter as Americans is this sort of America-centric view, right? If you live in America, you live in a bubble. I mean, there's definitely, and maybe that's other places as well, you would know better than I, but definitely in America, there is a bubble. Some of it is due to the media, but a lot of it is due to the sort of pro-America kind of nationalistic view that, well, whatever else is going on elsewhere is not as important as what we're doing here. And obviously, I don't ascribe to that view, so getting out there, traveling is valuable. So it's been cool for me to come out here, meet other people from other countries, and get to ask questions about like what's happening in your community, and to also see, do they actually care? Is it just Americans who are kind of ignorant to politics, or is that something that is a perspective that's everywhere? And I think people are people. People are easily distracted. Some people care about politics of their country and other countries. Some people don't. But just in general, as a journalist, knowing perspectives from many different viewpoints is always going to be valuable, and that definitely includes foreign perspective. So I appreciate that you are able to get out there and to see these different things and bring that insight into your work. And it's something I hope to start incorporating more for sure.
Do you have any first impressions of Europe?
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously Europe has a lot more history than the U.S. as far as architecture, but just in general history. I don't see the same aggression from cops, except for maybe one incident, as I typically deal with in the U.S. And also, I mean, and this is, of course, I've 8 days, right? So kind of limited, assessment on this. But I think that from my perspective, and maybe because it's the community we're hanging out with, but people do seem a bit more open to communicating as well. And there's, a lot of people in the U.S. can be kind of closed off, and I think that's elsewhere as well. But in what I've gotten in the last 8 days is some openness from people who are willing to talk, and maybe it's because of the tour and what's been created here, because there's such a range of topics. But yeah, go Europe, cool place. I'm happy to be here. I want to come back. I want to spend more time. And I think this is really just the beginning of this, because I do plan to come back. I really didn't think I was going to make it till next year. And I say that because I had planned to do a European tour next year. And I'm supposed to speak in the UK in September 2019. So I was just anticipating, okay, I'll get there in 2019. And this came earlier. So I'll be back, for sure.
I look forward to seeing you back in Europe. Being that you're also a journalist, I think you wanted to ask me a question or two. Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Let me grab this from you. Here we go. This is cool. Now I feel a little more comfortable. All right. So I'm here with Josh Friedman. So, I just would like to, because I'm going to share this on my channel too. I'd like to know what really, just for those who are out there, because as you know, like we're talking about the digital nomad lifestyle, and there's a lot of people that we come across who they're interested in Steemit and cryptocurrency, and there's this generation, the millennials, whatever, they say we're the most traveled generation ever. We have the world at our fingertips, and even this whole tour, it couldn't have happened without social media. Like, maybe it could have in the past, but it'd be a lot more difficult. What was the first initiative or the first couple of steps that you took to get yourself in the position where you are now?
It really boils down to two words: just go. So I made a trip out to Europe in 2012, I believe. That was the first time. And I toured around a fair part of the continent, saw a bunch of countries, and I kind of fell in love. But then I went back to the States, and I went back to doing reporting that I was doing there. I had a dream of coming back, but I didn't have any concrete plans in mind. And at the time, I figured I would only come back to Europe on vacations or on trips once in a while. But then one day I was having dinner with someone who happened to be married to a Bulgarian American, and I was told, you could go to Bulgaria. And at the time, I'd never stepped foot in Bulgaria. I knew a few things about Bulgaria, but that was it. I didn't have any Bulgarian relatives. I didn't have any contacts there. But I said, if I have this opportunity, then I'm going to take it. And I just went. And one thing led to another. I didn't expect to stay in Europe for a prolonged period of time. I thought I would go there for 1 year and I would have a blast, but there wouldn't be so much opportunity, so I'd just go back to the States. But it turned out to be totally different. I went to Bulgaria and I realized I had this newfound freedom in many senses of the word. I had professional opportunity that I didn't have before. I could start covering geopolitics, traveling to all these countries. Travel was suddenly a lot easier and cheaper. And I just went. And that's what I really encourage other people to do, because if you want to live an international lifestyle, it's not something that you can learn from reading a book or from listening to a talk. Of course, you can gather some helpful pointers, but the only way to really learn it is by putting yourself out there and going through the trials and tribulations and learning to adapt to what comes up. And that's how you learn to live abroad and travel and experience more of the world.
And how long have you been doing this now, like doing from Bulgaria and elsewhere?
I've now been based in Bulgaria for 3.5 going on 4 years.
Awesome. So just go ahead and do it if you want to get started. Where can my audience find your work?
I'm in a variety of places. I have my personal news website, which is called freemanpost.com, freemanpost.com. I'm on Steemit as Freeman Reporter. I also have a bit of a moniker of nomadic journalist. I've got a site, nomadicjournalism.com. I'm in various places and I write for various media, both in the States and in Europe.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Derrick. It's been a pleasure really getting to know you on this trip. Okay, thanks a lot. What do you say?
You are powerful. You are beautiful. You are free.
You are free.
Peace.